So, Lieutenant Lynn, tell me about, getting the call that night, and what did you get exactly as far as the call?
The caller's information stated that this will be the parking garage where the victim's phone was located.
So this is the parking garage right here?
This is the parking garage to my left, yes.
And what level was the car parked then?
The car was parked on the second level.
So, like right about there?
Yeah, it's right. You can kind of see it right behind these traffic lights, essentially. So when I entered the garage, I saw a black Honda Civic. I saw a person sitting in the driver's seat. At first, I thought it was this person taking a nap. But because the position of their head, I could see there's some discoloration around the neck area. So I decided to knock on the window. There was no response. So I radioed. He was likely deceased. This is one of the Intel campus we have in the city. This is one of their several parking garages. They have surveillance cameras throughout the garage. I took a closer look, and that's when I realized they were painted over.
Like dripping paint still? Like it dripped?
It looked like it was spray paint. We locked down the garage, and I request detective response.
He had been identified as Kenneth Fandrich, and he was a contractor at Intel.
Doing union pipe fitting.
He looked like he had passed peacefully. His hands were placed in his lap. We thought that that was strange.
But are you operating as if this is a homicide, possibly murder already?
Oh, we always do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That night, we actually had a patrol officer in the Intel command center where they have all their hundreds of cameras. They kept texting me little clips. All of a sudden, we have some random person, we have no idea who it is, that's going around spray painting about a half a dozen or so cameras in this parking garage.
Look at him just coming around the corner like that.
He's obviously in disguise. He's wearing a black mask covering most of his face, the safety glasses, and then the hard hat. So obviously he's trying to conceal his identity.
He does a pretty good job of spray painting, really kind of obscuring enough of the camera. You see a lot of movement happening, all of a sudden.
Then you see a lot of lights.
A lot of lights flashing.
What's going on in there during that when you see those lights flashing?
That's when the person is murdering Kenneth. So it was really initially like this big whodunit for us, a big mystery.
I mean, had you ever seen anything like that?
Not in real life, no.
This was straight out of the movies.
How would you two characterize this case when you first got it? What did you think?
You know, I just thought that it's a wild case.
Detectives Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo of the Hillsboro, Oregon Police Department had never encountered a crime scene like the one they encountered in January 2023.
It was in the evening after 9.
So we all got a page on our department cell phones saying that there was death at Intel.
Intel, the giant tech company known for its innovative computer chips, had several large production facilities in Hillsboro, Oregon, outside Portland.
It didn't make sense. He looked like he had passed peacefully. There was minimal blood within the car.
The deceased was Kenny Fandrich, age 56, a contract pipe fitter at the plant. His wife Tanya had reported him missing when he was late getting home. Like many couples, they share their locations on their phones. Tanya tracked him to the Intel parking lot.
We're not sure right now.
She was already there at the garage when police arrived with body cameras rolling.
Fire. We're gonna have medics. He's here in the garage somewhere.
A short time later, she learned that her husband was dead. The Hillsborough Police Mobile Command Post was stationed at the scene, and that was where detectives first talked to Tanya.
That night, you brought Tanya Fandrich right in here. What did she seem like to you?
She was very monotone in the way she was speaking.
Detective Diana Mesh was first to interview Tanya.
She seemed very out of her body, like she didn't react as much as you would think somebody would, but had to kind of pull a lot of the answers out of her.
Detective Mesh learned more about why Tanya had been at the scene.
She told me that they had some issues in the past with their marriage. Now, they would check in on each other more often.
Do alarm bells sort of go off here?
Yeah, there was some suspicion. We always look at the people closest to the deceased.
But Mesh knew better than to draw conclusions right away.
Everybody grieves differently. It just was different than other victims I've seen.
There was a lot to process for Tanya and investigators. The scene did not appear violent.
His lunch bag, his lunch, his keys, his phone, all set neatly next to him in the passenger seat. My first thought was, how are we going to figure this out?
Their first clues would come from those surveillance cameras.
So he will pop up right here next to that column that we're seeing right here in the corner. So kind of waits for her camera and then just pops up.
The detectives discovered a man wearing a hard hat and red mirror-tinted glasses had actually spray painted those cameras around 7 a.m. earlier that same day. His movements undetected by Intel security.
I want to say about 6 or 7 cameras.
But there were also cameras that had not been sprayed, and investigators locked in on images of a vehicle they believed belonged to the suspect.
Looking at early afternoon now, and then we see this maroon van come in the parking garage. And no front plate on the car.
It was an older maroon-colored Dodge van. They tracked the van's movements, camera by camera, before it disappeared under a layer of blue spray paint. Moments later, they could just make out the van pulling into a parking spot.
So right here, you can see that the van is this shadow right in here.
Okay, right.
And then this vehicle right here is actually Kenneth Fandrich's black Honda Civic.
It was 3:21 p.m. Just after Kenny had finished his shift, here he is on video walking back through the garage. And then, very hard to see behind the blue spray paint,
You can see a little bit of movement right here in the thing. And that is Kenneth walking back to his car. You just kind of have to watch the kind of shadows, essentially, what's going on between the two vehicles. You start seeing the headlights flash a couple times, like, somebody be unlocking their car.
detectives say the headlights on Kenny's Honda flashed as he unlocked his car with his key fob. That's when they believe the masked man grabbed Fandrich, still holding on to his keys.
And you see a lot of movement happening. All of a sudden,
Then you see a lot of light.
a lot of lights.
Detectives say that's Kenny, desperately pushing his key fob, as the masked man dragged him into that maroon van.
What do you think that's what's going on in there during that when you see those lights flashing?
We think that's when the person in the van is murdering Kenneth.
Detectives say Kenny was killed inside that maroon Dodge van before the killer staged Kenny's body in his black Honda. That meant the van itself would be a critical piece of evidence, the actual murder scene.
There could have been clothing and who knows what else in that minivan.
But finding the van would be a challenge. They couldn't see the license plates or the driver. The results of the autopsy would reveal Kenny Fandrich had died from blunt and compressive trauma of his neck. His neck had been broken. But who would want to kill Kenny Fandrich?
It was really initially like this big whodunit for us, a big mystery.
A mystery they hope might be solved when Intel security staff told investigators about another incident. Additional video images from the garage recorded a month earlier.
We learned that, hey, FYI, about a month prior, we reported our cameras being spray painted as well.
That incident was investigated.
Criminal mischief call.
A criminal mischief call.
But they never figured out who it was.
It was a man dressed in a construction helmet, black glasses, a mask, and we're like, well, that's a clue.
Investigators were 100% certain it was the same person wearing different glasses, and they say these new images revealed an unusual clue.
We had this distinctive forehead crease that we could see in this photo.
That
And
little bit of forehead that you see.
just the little bit of forehead, that's what we got.
It's a very odd clue right there.
It is, but for us, it was a big deal.
And the detectives had one other big deal. Something Tanya Fandrich had told them the night her husband died.
Has he been having any issues lately?
No, but he has a stalker.
A stalker who had been harassing her husband. And she had proof, a video from their own home security camera.
Actually see the person kind of crawl and move around a bit underneath the trailer right there. So this is the carport at the Fandrich's house out in Oregon City.
In the early hours of the investigation into the murder of Kenny Fandrich, his wife Tanya told detectives her husband had a stalker, seen here on the couple's home security cameras in their carport.
Here's some sort of utility trailer right here. And you'll notice right under the trailer, you actually see the person kind of crawl and move around a bit underneath the trailer right there.
Tanya told detectives the stalker was her old boss, Stephen Milner. Dr. Stephen Milner was a well-to-do veterinarian worth millions. She had worked with him in his clinic as a vet tech.
You ready for your close-up, doggies? Huh? Oh, Miley, you ready?
Crazy dogs. So Dr. Milner was how you two met, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Friends Cheryl Coquette and Darlene Robinson were longtime clients of the vet.
What was he like
He
as a vet?
He was wonderful. He was very compassionate, caring, kind.
He was a great vet.
Cheryl even took part in a video Dr. Milner made for his clinic, which had aired on the local news.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Dr. Milner.
Hey, Princess. If I can do an alternative thing that doesn't require medication, drugs and chemicals, that's really nice.
She's a happy girl.
The kind of vet that gets down at the level of the dog, like on the floor
Definitely.
with them?
On the floor.
And both Cheryl and Darlene knew Tanya, at least by sight.
She was there for, I think, 19 years, and she was the one who would come out and get us to take us back to the room and kind of do the intake on the animals.
Just a sweet, nice lady. Very, kind of quiet, but super friendly and very caring.
Detectives soon learned about a complicated relationship between Tanya and Dr. Milner. Tanya told investigators she and Dr. Milner had once had an affair, It began in early 2017. At the time, Milner was separated, and Tanya said her relationship with Kenny hit a rough patch.
Did you notice any interactions between her and Dr. Milner?
Just completely professional. It was just, he comes in, she goes out of the room.
He was the boss, in a way.
Yeah.
But Darlene thought she noticed something.
There came a point where my brain just kind of went, I wonder if there's, something going on, because just looks they would give each other.
Milner and Tanya tried to keep their affair quiet, say investigators. Milner even gave her a secret name, Kiki.
One of the nicknames was Kiki Essex.
Prosecutor Mahaley Streblow worked on the case.
It's one of those that's like, the name of your first pet and then the street that you grew up on.
But the couple's affair was exposed after a few months. In July 2017, when they attended a wedding together. Prosecutor John Gerhard.
There were employees from the veterinary clinic that were there.
She was under the impression that Kenneth was out of town for work.
Tanya indicated that they had both been drinking and that they were engaging in more physical intimacy in front of the employees during that wedding.
As the night ended, Tanya went home with Dr. Milner.
Lo and behold, Kenneth was not out of town for work.
When Tanya didn't return home that night, Kenny went to Milner's house.
And that's how they got caught.
Kenny didn't confront or make a big scene at the house. He kind of left the house and then started calling to try to figure out what's going on.
According to Tanya, she ended the affair soon after they were caught.
After that, the relationship with Tanya and Stephen Milner kind of stopped.
And that's when Kenny said Dr. Milner started harassing him.
When Kenny came to me, he was terrified.
Michael Fuller was Kenny's attorney.
This stalking issue had basically consumed his life.
Fuller says Milner started with harassing calls, then escalated from there.
Milner literally coming onto his property in the middle of the night, following him to work, threatening him, those type of things.
Tanya eventually left Milner's clinic. But Milner continued to track Kenny. Detectives found plenty of evidence of exactly how he did it.
Tanya actually provided this to us, and this is one of the actual tracking devices that Stephen Milner had placed on one of their vehicles.
Is this the device?
So this is the device. We believe this to be the battery pack. And what he had done and put it in this case with the magnets and then put it up underneath their vehicle.
In August 2019, roughly 2 years after Tanya said she ended the affair, Kenny applied for an order of protection against Milner. But detectives would learn the harassment continued, and the vet's infatuation with Tanya deepened.
He wanted Tanya, and he wasn't going to stop.
Within days of Kenny Fandrich's death, investigators set their sights on a suspect, veterinarian Dr. Stephen Milner. Detectives learned he was obsessed with Tanya. There were love notes.
So one of them was, the one absolute rock solid truth is that I love you. I have never loved anyone that way. I am consumed by your soul.
He wrote letters like that for years, even after Tanya had said the affair was over. Detectives also learned more about Tanya's relationship with her husband, Kenny.
It was a tumultuous relationship. Alcohol came into play between them. They were often, as you can say, hot and cold. They argued a lot.
Kenny had been charged with domestic violence years before, but the charges were not pursued and the couple reconciled. Then in August 2021, years after Tanya says she ended the affair with Milner, the couple had another fight. This time, she was arrested.
Why isn't he getting arrested?
The next day, something surprising happened.
Somebody posted her bail. She had $25,000 bail. When she leaves the jail, Stephen Milner's in the parking lot waiting for her.
Tanya told investigators she ended up staying with the doctor for a couple of days before returning to Kenny. She insisted nothing romantic happened. Milner was just helping her out as a friend.
To this day, none of us can figure out how Stephen Milner actually found out she had been arrested that night.
That case was later dismissed, and the couple reunited again. But Milner's campaign of harassment continued.
What do you think his end goal was? What did he think he could do? End their marriage and then end up happily ever after with Tanya?
Yeah. Exactly. We think that that's what his plan was. He wanted Kenneth out of the picture so he could be that white knight to save Tanya.
In March of 2022, just 10 months before Kenny's murder, Milner followed Kenny from Oregon City all the way to Hillsborough, a 45-minute drive. Kenny spotted him and called the police, and Milner was pulled over as body cameras captured the interaction.
Hi, Officer Edwards, Hillsborough Police. Do you know why we're stopping you today?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of this guy that I'm following him.
The responding officer learned from dispatch that there was history between the two men.
What's your role in the whole thing?
She's been a friend of mine for 20 years.
Milner told police he believed Tanya was in danger because she had allegedly told him Kenny was abusive.
I'm the only person who gives a and I'm not allowed to give a
So, here's my advice to you, okay? This is very, very strong advice. Leave them alone. He wants nothing to do with you. She wants nothing to do with you. If you show up at their house, if you contact them, anything like that, you're gonna go to jail. Go, thank you.
After that traffic stop, Kenny filed for a new order for protection. The original one had expired years earlier.
Kenny was absolutely in fear of his life.
And 2 weeks later, he was so stressed out, he told police he crashed his car.
My wife and I have been fighting today.
Sorry?
And I thought she was at her boss's house where I've caught her cheating on me.
Sorry?
And I was driving over there and he's just like right down the road and I lost control of my car and just...
Kenny's attorney says his client had every reason to be stressed out.
Kenny told me that Milner said, hey, I'm a veterinarian, I've done surgeries, and I have the tools to chop you up into little pieces.
In August of 2022, after Kenny found another tracking device under his car, Milner was criminally charged and was awaiting trial.
It was pretty clear to me that Milner was not in his right mind.
Just a month later, Kenny filed a civil suit seeking hundreds of thousands of dollars for invasion of privacy and infliction of emotional distress, allegedly brought on by Milner's stalking, harassment, and trespass. 5 months later, Kenny Fandrich was dead. Just days after the murder, detectives were convinced that Stephen Milner was that man behind the mask. But they needed more evidence.
We need to get eyes on Stephen Milner because we know there was some sort of violent confrontation. We want to see if he had any injuries.
Not wanting to tip him off, investigators asked him to come in for a check-in about the stalking case.
So we arranged a meeting for Stephen to come in to sign some paperwork. Detective Winter was inside at a reception desk.
And your goal, sitting there at the receptionist desk, sort of as an undercover, right?
I wanted to see if he had any injury to himself. He walks in, he looks extremely nervous.
Another person in the office noticed something.
She says, hey, he's got makeup on his face.
Makeup, investigators say, Milner used to cover up a scratch on his nose.
Bingo, you're thinking, we got our guy?
Yep, at that point, I thought, this is him, this is our guy that did this.
Moments later, after Milner walked out the door.
Hi, sir. I'm Deputy Davis, the Sheriff's Office. We're being recorded by my camera, so everything's going to be audio and visual recorded. You understand that? Yes. Okay, sounds good. Right now, you're being detained.
On January 31st, 2023, 4 days after Kenny Fandrich was found dead, Stephen Milner was taken into custody and within days charged with second-degree murder and stalking. With Milner in custody, detectives Rigo and Winter were quickly able to connect one important clue from those surveillance camera images: that unusual crease in the masked man's forehead.
There's that very prominent forehead crease that he couldn't hide if he tried.
There's no amount of makeup hiding that crease.
No.
Do you feel at this point you've got like a pretty solid case?
We had a lot of circumstantial pieces, like putting the puzzle together, but we were just at the tip of the iceberg of what we still need to find out.
More puzzle pieces would be found in Milner's house.
It was shocking that somebody this successful, a doctor, now suspect in a murder.
With Dr. Stephen Milner now in police custody, Hillsborough detectives Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo set out to find evidence that could prove Milner was at the scene when Kenny Fandrich was murdered.
As soon as he's arrested, we're getting search warrants for his DNA to be taken.
Hands behind your back, please.
We're getting search warrants for his house as well.
And detectives weren't quite prepared for what they found at his home.
We found a cardboard cutout behind a mirror of Stephen Milner's face placed on a very oiled masculine man with a dog paw tattoo over his heart.
Very odd memorabilia to have in your bedroom.
Yes.
I would say so.
And there was more.
In the nightstand in Stephen's master bedroom is a bunch of items that we kind of refer to as a shrine to Tanya. There was a framed picture of Tanya. There were love notes. There were women's underwear, just very personal keepsakes from their relationship together.
That's more than just collecting a few love notes and cards.
Especially from someone who hadn't been in a relationship with you for several years at this time period.
To build their case, investigators needed to connect the maroon-colored minivan seen in the Intel parking garage parked next to Kenny's car to Milner. But as far as investigators could determine,
Right now, you're being detained.
Milner usually drove the white Toyota SUV he'd been in when he was arrested.
Initially, we didn't know what evidence this car could provide us.
So they ordered an FBI forensic analysis of the SUV's computer, hoping it might provide some clues about Milner's movements before and after Kenny's murder.
So essentially, the computer that's in the car retains a lot of information. And luckily, one of those things is like GPS data points.
Where was that bit of information? Is that a computer that's pulled out on top
Yeah,
there?
so that's part of the front dash, and then it was just a little motherboard type thing that had a chip in it.
Within weeks, they got a call from their digital expert.
She said, you guys need to look at the Home Depot in Oregon City. He's there a lot the day of the murder.
Home Depot, just 15 minutes down the road from Milner's house.
How central did this place become towards piecing together the evidence that you had?
This was essentially like center stage of the investigation. Came into place.
The detectives asked Home Depot security personnel if there had been suspicious activity in the lot recently. Amazingly, they said yes. 2 cars, a maroon minivan and a blue sedan, had been flagged for parking there for long periods of time, with only temporary paper license plates.
And we learned that there had been a lot of calls created in the past couple months
with a suspicious blue car and a maroon minivan.
For the second time in a matter of weeks, parking lot security cameras and the images they recorded would provide investigators with key clues. In this clip from January 27, 2023, the day of Kenny's murder, detectives say you can see Milner's white SUV pull up and park. Within minutes, the driver, believed to be Stephen Milner, gets into the maroon minivan. Another camera then captured the minivan exiting the parking lot.
So what was he doing with the cars?
So essentially, this was like his staging location. So he would drive his personal car here and then either pick up the blue sedan or the maroon minivan and then drive that out to Hillsborough.
What do you call them?
Burner cars.
Burner cars.
Yes. Everybody kind of is more familiar with like a burner phone, where you have a phone that's not traced to you, but you can use it for what you need, get rid of it. Essentially, he did the same thing, but with a car.
Investigators believed Milner may have been using those burner cars to secretly follow Kenny to work, even after law enforcement had told him to stop.
You're very close to going to jail today for stalking, okay? Like very, very close.
They also learned Home Depot security cameras had images of the driver of those cars shopping in the store about a month before Kenny was murdered.
He parked right in front of Home Depot.
He went in and then we saw him come to the self-checkout area and he had bought a pair of like safety glasses.
Was his face visible in that surveillance?
It was.
Oh, yeah.
There was no doubt it was Stephen Milner. And those glasses he bought, detectives say you can see them in his right hand as he exited the store. The receipt said they had a red mirror tint. Detective Winter had an idea.
We just happened to be sitting near one of the aisles, and I was like, I'm going to go see where they sell the glasses. And then a couple boxes down was a yellow hard hat that looked very similar to the one that he was wearing in all of the Intel garage surveillance.
The detectives were convinced this was where Milner had gotten his disguise to kill Kenny.
You have all of this, but you were missing one big piece of evidence. What was it?
We were, at this point, still missing a maroon minivan.
Why is the minivan so important?
Because it's the minivan that we believe was really our main crime scene. We thought there was going to be forensic evidence in that minivan. So we really wanted to get that minivan to help really put the icing on this case.
Detective Rigo was laser focused on tracking down that maroon minivan. And he got an incredibly lucky break. When those suspicious burner cars had been flagged, the VIN number was also recorded. Rigo searched it and found out that van had been found abandoned just a few days after the murder.
The highway people had towed it off the side of the I-5 in North Portland.
It had been dumped then.
It had been dumped there. So I called the tow company, hey, do you have this car? No, sorry, we sold it to a scrap metal company.
Detective Rigo knew the clock was ticking to retrieve what he believed was the crime scene and all of the key evidence it held.
So me and another detective drive as quick as we can to North Portland.
But they were too late. When he asked about the minivan, the scrapyard showed Rigo this video. This is that maroon minivan police believe Milner drove to the Intel garage to kill Kenny just moments before it was pulverized by the metal jaws of the scrapyard claw.
I was able to watch one of my key pieces of evidence be crushed and taken away.
Before your very eyes.
Before my very eyes,
Oh my
exactly a week too late.
On January 13th, 2025, Stephen Milner went on trial, charged with stalking and murdering Kenny Fandrich. Washington County prosecutors John Gerhardt and Mahaley Streblow knew they faced a challenge without that maroon minivan, where they believe Stephen Milner murdered Kenny.
All the evidence that was inside the van was lost with it. The biggest disappointment for us is there was likely a lot of forensic evidence.
But prosecutors had some forensic evidence they say put Stephen Milner at the scene. DNA from swabs taken of Kenny Fandrich's hands.
I remember getting an email of the results and immediately opening it and being like, oh my gosh, this is it. Stephen Milner's DNA was on Kenneth Fandrich's hands.
Now you really felt like you had your case made.
Yes, because there's no way he could explain away why his DNA would have been on Kenneth's body.
Stephen Milner would have an explanation for that. To everyone's surprise, Milner took the stand, admitting he did spray paint the cameras and was in the Intel garage waiting for Kenny. He presented what detectives believed was a far-fetched explanation. He was trying to save Tanya. There were no cameras in court, but there is audio of Milner telling prosecutor John Gerhard why he was in the Intel lot that day.
I was trying to get him arrested for driving while he was drunk, or driving without a license.
Why was it your responsibility to enforce Oregon traffic laws?
I was trying to keep Tanya from getting killed.
He had this delusional belief that he needed to protect Tanya Fandrich.
The defense case, it seemed to be to kind of get the jury to maybe feel sympathetic to Milner.
And Milner insisted it was Kenny who attacked him after Kenny spotted Stephen Milner inside the maroon minivan.
Stephen essentially said, well, I knew I was caught, so I opened the door to kind of confront him, and then Kenneth attacked me.
Basically fought for a little bit. There was pushing and shoving. Eventually I was able to kind of push him up against the car and then shove him into the car.
Prosecutor John Gerhard challenged Milner's self-defense story.
It's that push that causes him to fall into his seat.
He hit up against the car and then kind of tripped at the same time, and I kept pushing.
His testimony just didn't line up with the physical evidence at the scene.
To my knowledge, bumping your head on a car door is not going to break your neck.
After 6 hours of deliberations, the jury found Stephen Milner guilty of murdering Kenny Fandrich and multiple stalking charges.
Are the parties prepared for sentencing?
Yes, that's right.
Cameras were allowed for Stephen Milner's sentencing hearing, which took place on February 18th, 2025.
Sir, can you stand up and count for sentencing?
Tanya, who asked not to be shown on camera, gave a powerful statement directed at Stephen Milner. Prosecutor Mahaley Streblow read us her words.
All you had to do was stop. Hear me clearly when I say you are a vengeful, deceptive, manipulating, self-serving, aggressive, hateful, lying predator. And all you had to do was stop.
Stephen Milner was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Milner did not respond to our request for an interview.
This case highlights the very worst case scenario. Take stalking seriously.
Kenny's attorney, Michael Fuller, says what happened highlights the limits of the system that is supposed to protect victims of stalking.
Kenny called the police. When that didn't work, he got a lawyer. Kenny did everything he could under the legal system, and it didn't help him at all.
After Kenny's death, Fuller filed a wrongful death suit on behalf of Kenny's estate, asking for damages of several $1 million. Fuller believes Milner made millions from real estate investments and the sale of his business.
In the wrongful death case, my goals are to extract as much money as we can out of Milner If the estate recovered any money for Kenny, it would go to his wife.
For Milner's former veterinary clients, Cheryl and Darlene, it was hard to reconcile the doctor they knew with a now convicted murderer.
I could not believe that it was the same guy.
I just believe that he ended up going through some type of psychosis, and I think that at some point he snapped.
I think it really gets down to, like, you never know what anybody is capable of. You never know what monster might be inside.
Almost a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He had everything to live for. You know, he could do anything he wanted to do. And this is where it ended up. It's real sad.
Welcome back to Postmortem. I'm your host, Anne Marie Green, and today we're discussing the mysterious death of Kenneth Fandrich. He was found murdered inside a parking garage on January 27th, 2023 in Hillsboro, Oregon. When police reviewed the security footage from that garage, they noticed a masked man spray painting the cameras, wearing a disguise to obscure his identity. But incredibly, as we're going to discuss, they were still able to find the killer. So joining me now to discuss this is 48 Hours correspondent Natalie Morales. It's a fascinating case. Thanks for joining us again, Natalie.
Sure is fascinating. Good to be with you, Anne Marie.
As usual, a reminder to everyone, if you haven't already listened to this episode of 48 Hours, head on over to your podcast feed. You'll find it just below this one. Listen to the hour and then come on back for this conversation. All right, let's get into it. The victim here is Kenneth Fandrich. He also went by Kenny, and investigators discovered his body in the driver's seat of his car in a parking garage run by the tech company Intel. The garage is located on this massive campus, very large campus of one of Intel's production facilities. This is where he's been working as a contract pipe fitter. Natalie, you actually went to the garage, and I just want to get a sense of just how big is the garage? What was it like there? How many cameras are we talking about? Was it like finding a needle in a haystack?
You know, this was actually almost the opposite of a needle in a haystack. When you think about it, I mean, this is a huge tech company, Intel. We're talking the maker of all those incredible super speedy chips that we all use on our computers. But, you know, this is an area, the garage especially, where there are, you know, loads of security cameras all the way inside the garage, as well as on the campus. It's an area that is well covered. There is a lot of security. So obviously the garage of a tech company like Intel is a very interesting choice and place to commit a murder.
Intel's security staff told investigators that a month earlier, the security cameras had been spray painted. It was investigated as just sort of criminal mischief. But do investigators think that maybe this was a dry run? And I'm also curious, I don't know if you know this or not, Natalie, but was it the same security cameras or different ones? I imagine there are many, probably hundreds.
Well, it seemed that Stephen Milner had been plotting this for a while, according to investigators. I mean, they do believe it was a test run, and the cameras that he spray painted were the cameras that he then spray painted, a month later in the act of killing Kenny Fandrich. They did notice it. They filed a suspicious activity report, as you said, but they couldn't pinpoint exactly who it was at the time.
You see in the hour, the security footage, I mean, almost all of it is blacked out except for probably the most crucial camera, right? there's one camera where he spray paints almost all of it. There's probably like 1/10 at the top where you can actually see what's happening. And because of that little slip up, investigators were able to identify what they believe was the scene of the murder, right? It's this maroon minivan.
Yeah, that 1/10 of a slip up, as you said, was huge for the investigators because with that, they were able to see that maroon minivan just kind of making its way through the parking garage. Now, keep in mind as well, though, that they did have other security cameras all the way through. So as the minivan was making its way up, it was tracked throughout with other cameras that had not all been spray painted. That said, though, they were never really able to see the driver or to identify the killer in the garage. They needed to do all the police work to connect all those dots. So, what was really fascinating about covering this case is you see this is a real police procedural. I mean, this shows you how well the police built their case from the minute they had just that little sliver of video that they could see.
When you say connect all of the other dots, I guess when you have it seems like you have a little bit to work with. Everything is incredibly important. And so in this video where you can see the person just a little bit, but he's almost completely covered. The only bit of skin that you can really see is right above his forehead. And so they identify this crease. I gotta tell you, looking at that was something that I did not notice. I didn't even consider it as a defining feature. I just thought maybe the mask was pushing his skin down. That would not have jumped out at me, but it became crucial.
Oh, it became huge. That forehead crease was such an identifying characteristic. Now, this was from the video from the security cameras a month before in that test run case, that they were able to see a little bit more of that mysterious person behind the mask. And that crinkle in the forehead, it turns out that's a genetic trait. I don't know if, since viewing the hour, if you've started looking at people, but I know when I'm in airports or when I'm, out and about, I start noticing that. And it's very rare that you see that forehead crinkle. So it was definitely something that was a huge break in the case when it came to trying to identify the suspect.
I had no idea that was a genetic trait. Now you're making me think about my forehead, but there's a wee bit of Botox up there, so it's not crinkling the way it used to.
The other way.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this turns out to be sort of a critical clue, and the Hillsborough police immediately focus on Kenny Fandrich's wife, Tanya. It's not completely surprising. I mean, if you're a 48 Hours fan, often the spouse is sort of the person that investigators focus on. But it's also about access, knowing his schedule, knowing where he is. There's only going to be a handful of people who know that information. So inevitably, that's where investigators are going to start. Now, I think maybe some people might see the video of Tanya and think that her demeanor's maybe a little cool, maybe suspicious. I didn't get that. I thought she seemed adequately, concerned. But why did police ultimately rule her out?
As you said, people do look at the partner or the spouse, the person closest to the victim. Tanya is there on the scene even before the responding officer arrived. That arouses some suspicion. However, as Tanya tells that officer, she said, "My husband has a stalker." And Tanya revealed that she had had a relationship with Stephen Milner, and they had had an affair, that it had ended years prior, but that Stephen Milner was still actively stalking Kenneth Fandrich and also keeping track of her, even though she had said many times, "Leave us alone." And she had also reported that to police.
Let's talk about Stephen Milner. Here we have this veterinarian. He's a smart guy. He's popular. He seems sort of pretty normal, though. I mean, when they did have the affair, they were kind of eventually sort of blatant about it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a little odd for a guy who's, you would think would be concerned about his professional reputation. But did you learn anything more about who he was and his personality?
We talked to a couple of his clients, as you saw in the hour, and they say that by all accounts, he was very involved in the community, very well liked. was pretty much a well-known figure in Oregon City where his vet practice was. They also knew Tanya because she worked with him, and they had seen their interactions, so they talked about that as well.
Something in the hour that I was really fascinated by, I don't know if it kind of hooked other viewers, but that police body cam video where he's being pulled over, right? And he tells the police officer that, Tanya is in danger. Is he just sort of making this up, or does he really believe this, that this is justifying his behavior when she wants nothing to do with him?
When he was pulled over for following Kenny, Milner told police, look, I'm the only one who really gives a blank, as he said to the officer at the time. And I'm not allowed to give a blank. At that point, there had been issues between Tanya and Kenny Fandrich of domestic abuse. Stephen Milner really felt like he was the one that could save Tanya from what he felt could be a dangerous situation for her.
Natalie, one of the videos that we see in the hour that kind of really touched me it's of Kenny. He's sitting on the back deck. He's really distraught. He's crashed his car after an argument with his wife, and he just looks so sad and heartbroken. What more do we know about this marriage and the problems they'd experienced?
Tanya and Kenny, they had struggled over the years. Alcohol typically came into play, according to Tanya, when there were these instances of domestic violence. It became something of a he said, she said. Tanya acknowledged their issues. And as I said, she was, very firm in saying this relationship with Stephen Milner happened years ago. It was in her past, and that she and Kenny Fandrich were really trying to work through all those issues, and they were stronger than ever as a couple.
Welcome back. So, Natalie, as you mentioned, investigators really didn't have a lot to go on linking Milner to Kenny's murder, so they really have to kind of dig in and find this evidence. They go to his house. So I want to ask you, what sort of things did they discover? And I definitely want to ask you, what was up with that cardboard cutout in his house?
Yeah, that was a very odd clue. Milner did have a male roommate who was living with him at the time of his arrest. But, investigators, when they saw that cardboard cutout, they assumed, rightfully so, that was Stephen Milner's room, because then they open the drawers and they see he has this so-called shrine to Tanya with all the love notes and letters that he had kept. He even acknowledged in those notes and letters, I know you don't want me, there's no future here in this relationship, that you want this to be over, but he couldn't get over it. So they felt that Stephen Milner seemed like the likely suspect based on all of that. But that said, they still had to make their case, and they had to have solid proof to connect that this Stephen Milner, who had this stalking history and past, is the guy who was in the garage at the time when Kenny Fandrich was killed, and to prove that he was the one who actually committed the murder.
That's the thing. All that extra stuff that perhaps goes to motive, but you need some sort of solid evidence. So then what ultimately allowed investigators to build their case against Milner?
Well, it really came down to, the good detective work, as we talked about, and following the maroon minivan trail. So Stephen Milner usually drove a white Toyota SUV, and once they seized the car, investigators were able to analyze the data on the computer within the car, and they noticed that he had been going to an Oregon City Home Depot. He had been there, in fact, on the day of the murder. So once detectives Rigo and Winter went to that Home Depot, they asked security there if there had been any suspicious activity on the parking lots. Turns out the security did notice there had been a couple of cars that had been parking and had gone in and out of the parking lot a couple of times. Local law enforcement was called, and local law enforcement then saw these vehicles. They were able to get the VIN numbers off of them, these so-called burner cars that Stephen Milner was using. Detectives Rigo and Winter were able to then track down that maroon minivan to a scrapyard, which, as you saw in the hour, unfortunately, their biggest clue, they believe the minivan was the murder scene, just a week earlier had been crushed. So unfortunately, that big clue that they were hoping for in the minivan was then gone right before their very eyes.
It still amazes me just how often we are all on camera, right? But this is the first time that I've seen video as investigators sort of watched a key piece of evidence being destroyed. I'm sure they wanted to kind of like reach into the screen and just pluck that vehicle out.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were a week too late, you know, to get that vehicle. Had they gotten there a week earlier, they probably could have had that and have gotten all the evidence they needed. That said, they were able to eventually get DNA that was the concrete proof that they needed.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about the two lead detectives. What was your take on this pair?
Oh, yes. Detective Stephanie Winter and Devin Rigo. I mean, these are like the dynamic duo of an investigation team. We all were saying they really need their own TV show. I mean, Stephanie is about 6'2" or 6'3", former college basketball player. And this was actually her first homicide case that she worked on. So she was paired up with Devin Rigo, who had, you know, a real solid background in working homicides. And it was a real breakthrough case for both of them because, you know, you don't see a lot of murders in that area of Hillsboro, Oregon. And here you have this mysterious, such a suspicious case. It really came down to them chasing all the leads and knowing where to go.
And so, finally, on January 13th, 2025, Stephen Milner goes on trial for stalking and murdering Kenny Fandrich. But as we pointed out, a ton of forensic evidence is lost because that maroon van is crushed. So the prosecution has to work around that. Was that sort of I guess that was the biggest hurdle.
So, of course, when the detectives see that key piece of evidence, that maroon minivan being crushed, they think, well, there goes our key evidence for trial. However, it really came down to the great police work in this case and being able to connect all the dots. And they had plenty of surveillance footage, not to mention past orders of protection that proved that Stephen Milner had been stalking Kenny Fandrich and Tanya and that there had been a history there between them. They did have DNA as well. You know, Stephen Milner's DNA was on Kenny Fandrich's hands, so that was crucial as well.
So, of course, Milner has an explanation for that. He did take the stand. There were no cameras in the courtroom, but there is audio. And so we're going to play some of what he had to say to explain why his DNA was there. This was not included in the 1-hour broadcast. He is speaking with defense attorney Amanda Thibault. He's under direct examination, and here's what he had to say.
What happened next?
I jumped out towards him.
What happened next?
Then we basically fought for a little bit.
Okay. Can you describe that fight for me?
There was pushing and shoving. I was kind of trying to push him back into his car, and he was punching at me.
Did you punch Kenneth Fandrich?
Me, I don't know.
Okay. Did you kick him?
I didn't kick him.
Did you grab onto him?
Yes.
What happened next?
Eventually I was able to kind of push him up against the car and then shove him into the car.
How much force were you using when you were pushing and shoving him, Mr. Milner?
As much as I could.
Why?
I was scared. We were fighting.
What were you scared of?
Him, that he was going to hurt me.
It's so interesting to hear. And first of all, even to just see him take the stand, here Stephen Milner is not denying that he was there. He said, I was there. Yes, I was the one who spray painted the cameras. But he claimed he did it all out of self-defense. And he said, when Milner confronted Kenny, he's like, Kenny is the one who attacked me.
He says that he's defending Tanya. I would think a self-defense claim is pretty tough when, I mean, it's not like Tanya's there. He's seeking out Kenny at his place of work.
His whole, self-defense defense really didn't make sense. Stephen Milner said that his reasons for being there in the parking garage and for going after Kenny in that case was because he felt that Kenny Fandrich was a continued threat to Tanya because of the past abusive claims in their relationship. Now, the prosecutor, Mahaley Streblow, said that in that testimony did not line up at all with the physical evidence at the scene. It goes against everything that they were able to piece together. But, I imagine that his defense attorney thought letting him take the stand and speak to his own defense and reasons for being there, perhaps if he could convince one jury member that, he was the guy who was really just there trying to do a good deed, trying to protect Tanya, and that it was, Kenny Fandrich who came after him. All he needed to do was to convince one juror.
Clearly, the jury didn't buy his self-defense defense. Stephen Milner found guilty of murdering Kenny Fandrich and also found guilty of multiple stalking charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. But I think what's really sort of tragic about this is a couple that did everything right. They did everything that they were supposed to do, and they still were not protected.
Yes. And that, in fact, is what is so tragic about the case, is that there's such a clear history of stalking here. And, previously Milner had been criminally charged back in August of 2022 when he had planted another tracking device on Kenny's car. Then Kenny filed that civil suit where he was seeking hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages for infliction of emotional distress. Prosecutors brought all of this up, and Tanya even raised it herself in her victim impact statement. She looked at Stephen Milner and she said, all you had to do was stop. She said that she and her husband, Kenny Fandrich, are doing everything they possibly could to try to alert authorities to Stephen Milner's stalking behavior. Prosecutors acknowledged the only other thing they possibly could have done, because there had been multiple orders of protection already taken out, would be to track Stephen Milner himself. I mean, had authorities been tracking Stephen Milner, they would have seen there's about a 45-minute drive where he's going back and forth from Oregon City to Hillsborough, tracking Kenny Fandrich and following him as he went to work.
How is Tanya doing today?
Well, Tanya obviously has experienced a lot of loss in her life. No amount of money will make up for that. But Kenny's estate has a wrongful death suit against Stephen Milner. If any money is won, Tanya would stand to benefit. Kenny's estate is seeking damages of several millions of dollars. And reportedly, Stephen Milner sold his veterinary clinic years ago and apparently has an estimated net worth of several $1 million. But you can imagine she has to be shattered. She's a victim in this case. She was a stalking victim, and then her husband was murdered. So she is a victim on so many sides of this case.
Yeah, absolutely. You always sort of try to look for the lessons in all of these stories. I think if there is a lesson, it's that stalking behavior is not normal. Right? It's not something to be dismissed, and you should take it seriously.
Yeah. And certainly Tanya and Kenny Fandrich did, and still it was not enough in this case.
No, absolutely not. Natalie, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
And to everyone else, follow and listen to Postmortem on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.